Hey everybody, welcome back to the Optometry Money Podcast. We're helping ODs all over the country make better and better decisions around their money, their career, and their practices. I am your host, Evon Mendrin, certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors, a no-commission fiduciary financial planning firm just for optometrists nationwide. And today's episode is going to be just a little bit different. It's going to be my guest appearance on the Ultimate OD Podcast, hosted by Dr. Nick Lillie. He invited me on to talk about our experience growing our businesses, what I've learned about taking the leap and cold starting a business from scratch, how it's affected our family lives, why I'm serving specifically optometry. And at the end, I give a few tips that hopefully practice owners can take and apply to your practices right away. Hopefully, Dr. Lillie is familiar. He was a recent guest here on the podcast. And if you haven't heard about his podcast, it's definitely worth a listen and subscribing to. He has so many consistent practice management and clinical tips, and he's got a great personality and a mind for business that makes it a lot of fun to listen to. As always, if you enjoy the content, please share with your fellow ODs and leave a review. Any feedback from you is super helpful in making it a better and better resource. And if you have any questions or thoughts about future episodes, shoot me an email at Evon, E-V-O-N, at optometrywealth.com. And let me know what kind of content or topics are valuable to you. And lastly, you can find this episode and more at the Education Hub on my website, www.optometrywealth.com. And without further ado, here is my conversation with Dr. Nick Lillie.
All right, my friends, this is the Ultimate OD Podcast, and today we are having one of our outside-the-box interviews. So, Evon Mendrin from Optometry Wealth Advisors. Now, Evon owns Optometry Wealth Advisors and is a certified financial planner and certified student loan professional. He lives in Central California with his wife and 2 kids. After years of experience serving a variety of different families working in different business models, he cold started a financial planning firm serving only optometrists nationwide. His goal is to build a business just for ODs from the ground up, create content to educate and impact the entire profession, and to serve at that critical intersection of personal and practice finances. Sounds like a lot. Evon, how you doing today, man?
Doing great. I really appreciate you having me on. I am excited and humbled to be here, and it sounds like someone wrote that intro and sent it to you. So I'll have to work on that a little bit.
Great authorship, man. So as we're recording this, we just got out of the holiday weekend. How's your weekend, man? What did you do?
Awesome. I am working on some big projects here at my house, and the list tends to grow exponentially. So that's basically what my whole weekend is working on one project or another. Okay,
2 kids. How old are they?
I've got one just turned 9. Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Okay.
One turned 9 months old. My oldest.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's my daughter. My oldest, my son is 3 years old now.
Okay, I have a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and a 2-month-old. So,
oh wow, okay.
You and I, we little realize we're doing this, and we're like jacked up because we don't sleep anymore, right?
Yep, that's right.
Got the little kids. So, have you always lived in California?
Always, yeah, always in Central California, right here in the middle of the state, in the Central Valley. So, yep, born and raised.
Gotcha. I'm from Michigan, so I have to ask you, what's your relationship with snow? How do you feel about snow?
I love snow. I mean, we're right next to a mountain range, the Sierra Nevadas. So, like, people think of Yosemite National Park, like that's where that's at. So, I love the mountains. I love snow. Although I got to say, like, I don't get it like you do. So, I have to go up to the mountains.
Do you ski or snowboard?
I used to snowboard. It's been a long time, but I have to say, like, I got to go up to the mountains to get snow, so I don't experience it like you do. It's like a fun thing I get to go look forward to.
Gotcha. Well, right now I have 3 months of no snow, and that's Michigan for you, so I'm going to take full advantage. That being said, let's get into this. So one of the things when I was reading your introduction, I always am interested in other businesses, other people, how they do things, even within my own industry. I love seeing how other practices run. When you were working with other, a variety of families and different business models, what are some cool things you took away from that? What did you learn?
I mean, there's always something you pick up from having to getting the opportunity to talk with different people in different life experiences. You get to research a variety of topics. For me, it's financial planning, so a variety of financial planning topics. So there's always something that you pick up from getting a chance to talk with a different type of family in a different life scenario. It was anywhere from C corporation farm owners to typical retirees to government employees. So there's always something you can pick up from all of those different experiences and all that you had to learn and research to help those people out.
Any common threads that you saw?
Yeah, I think the common thread among everyone is, taxes, number one. Everyone's got to pay them. Everyone wants to pay as little as possible, but there's always a common thread in that. Am I okay? Am I making the right decisions? And it doesn't really matter where those people were at. Some were wealthier than others. A lot of the fears and concerns sort of became the same among all of them. It's, am I making the right decisions? Am I on track for whatever that means to that person? I know even among the wealthiest people I talk to, like, they still had those same fears and concerns on a different level. Yeah, but it was still there regardless.
So whenever I have a patient, I get like 80, 89-year-old patients, and they are healthy, they're fit, and I'm like, what's your secret? Is there a food? Is there exercise? And a lot of times they just smile and said, I don't know. They don't have it. But occasionally I'll get a little nugget, right? Yeah. Like, I always do this or I always do that. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to internalize that and see if I can apply it to my life. Is there anything you saw with the people that they may not have been the wealthiest, but they were the most content and most calm, or just that you look at them and said, I want that? Is there anything that you took from those families?
Yeah, two things. Number one, some of the most successful in terms of like retirees, people that were coming in at about retirement, and they've built up enough wealth for them. Like, the thing that they did, they weren't expert investors. Like, they didn't know everything there was to know about finance. This was a lot of the times that was the first time they've ever talked to someone that knows, in financial planning. So it's not like they had help throughout their careers, but they focused on simple habits. Like, they just focused on a habit of saving and making that a priority, and just doing that consistently over their lifetime. Like, it was those really simple habits, but that compounded over years and years and years of their career. As their income grew, like, those habits didn't change. That's really what got them to where they were. So it was just a basic focus on, like, just simple, important habits.
Everyone wants the magic pill, right?
Yeah.
Give me the one big thing. And it's a bunch of little things over time, whether it's optometry, whether it's, you want to be better at sports, retirement planning. It's all those little things added up over time that gives you your bang for your buck, right?
Yeah, it was incredible. I'm always so impressed by the people that it was really just a matter of habit and keeping, sticking to it, keeping that out of sight, out of mind, and not letting anything get them off track, and just sticking with that. And those people were successful. And another thing that helped them to be successful was that they had a good feel for what made them content in their life. Like, what was enough for them? What were the things that were valuable to them? And so it wasn't really for them about the money itself. It was just about, hey, I know that this money allows me to live the life that I enjoy, and that's enough for me. And even when they had like substantial wealth, and I remember having conversations like, you can spend more money. Like, you have more than enough. You need to do something with this. But they were content. I mean, their lives were content is because they knew the things that were important to them. They knew where their values were, and they knew what was enough.
Good. I always say self-evaluation is key to success. So
yeah.
Knowing what you want and then making that your priority, and not what someone else is kind of saying, this is what you should like. Now that brings me to knowing what you want, self-evaluation. Optometry Wealth Advisors. I'm always a big fan of like starting a good foundation and then going from there. Well, you started this and you're solely working with optometrists.
Yep.
Right. So fill me in. What led you to do this, and then why optometrists?
Yeah, I guess there's a few questions wrapped up in there. The first one is like, why did I start a business in the first place? there was always just an itch that I always knew I wanted to own and to grow my own business, something in my own vision from the ground up. And no matter what different business models I worked in the past, like that thought always stuck with me. It never went away. As much as I wanted to put it aside and focus on what was in front of me, like it never went away. And then it came time to do that. And the next question there is like, why specialize? Like why focus on one
right from the
group of
get-go?
people? Yeah. I have that experience, like trying to be all things to all people. That didn't really interest me. Like I wanted to focus full time on people that fascinated me and on financial planning issues that really interested me. And I knew that there were plenty of people to help everyone else. Like I just knew I wanted to focus on people that were really fascinating to me and that I knew I can bring some value to. But I also knew that the business case to specializing made all the sense in the world to me. And we can talk about that more if you want. But so one was just a fascination. The other thing was just that it made all the sense in the world to me, at least for my profession, to specialize from a business case. And
gotcha.
then,
do you know optometrists? What's the fascinating? Where did you get this interest for? Is anyone in the family optometrists? Or?
No, like I don't have a great story, unfortunately. Like I never witnessed an optometrist being wronged. I don't have like a great origin story. It really was just thinking through a lot and for a long time about who was I really interested in. And for me, it was always professional service businesses always fascinated me, and entrepreneurship always fascinated me. And optometrists and their practices and your practices were always in that small list of people that said like, they're just so interesting. And the more I thought about it, the more I talked with other optometrists, because I did have experience working with optometrists in the past. And the more I talked with optometrists, the more I listened to podcasts, and the more conversations I had, the more I read about them and about your practices, both the financial side and just all the other aspects of it. Like I just became more and more interested. And I just felt like optometry as a profession was underserved. And I felt like I can add something valuable. So I just made a decision and dove all in.
That's awesome. And the thing that, from my perspective, being an optometrist, when I see someone who's starting a business cold, so you being a financial planner, I know you've done your due diligence. You've looked at this. Yeah. You picked optometry. That's got to make us as optometrists feel good. Like you have to see something like there's potential. Like it's not going to be gone by the way of a Blockbuster in the next 5-10 years, because that would be a horrible decision for you, right?
Absolutely.
Like you see potential.
I mean, I've talked to a lot of ODs, and I've talked to consultants and other professionals that work with optometrists, and the future for optometry in their eyes is bright, and I believe that. I mean, I see the work you do for your patients in your community, and I hear the continued health issues with eyes, and I've experienced that myself. So I think the future is bright for optometry, and I really hope that's the case, because my family's livelihood depends on it. So please, private practice owners. Yeah. Please.
We'll all unite. Yes, we will survive. Now, one of the keys to success, especially when you're in a startup, cold start, if any of my fellow ODs are listening out, everyone starting cold has to manage expectations, right? Because not only from the financial aspect, but from the mental aspect, if you aren't ready to grind it out to get through, it's gonna tear you apart. That's just my experience. You're 1 year in, correct?
Yep, 1 year in.
Okay. Where are you going to be in 15 years, and how are you going to get there?
Yeah, everything you said about starting a new business is right. It's a grind, and it can wear you down. And if you're not prepared for that financially and mentally, like it'll take you down with it. But 15 years from now, my vision for 15 years is 3 full-time planners, 250 families served. That's sort of the balance, and thinking about that, like the 3 priorities I'm trying to weigh long term are number 1, time with my family and church community. So just time in my personal life whenever I need it. So that's 1, just time flexibility. Number 2, the second priority is having a bigger impact for the optometry profession than just myself. So that guides a lot of decisions I'm making. And then number 3 is is having a business that future advisors and planners can learn and grow in a really good advice-centered business model. So there's sort of those three priorities I'm trying to weigh. My family being top, obviously, but
and I love that. Family is the most important thing in my life as well. How is your family supporting? What did your wife think when you told her this?
So there's three things that I feel are important that I've written about this. I've talked about this. There's three things I feel are so important when starting a new business. It's having a plan for cash flow. It's personal cash flow. It's making sure your family's on board, your spouse is on board, and then surrounding yourself with a support network, especially your professional peers. But so I took 1 and 2 to heart without, there was no way I was moving forward if I didn't have my financial plan figured out. Not surprising, I'm a financial planner, but but if my wife wasn't on board, I wasn't moving forward. And we talked about it for a long time. I mean, it was 2 years maybe, and we went back and forth on it. We talked about it. We put it aside. We talked about it. We put it aside. And there was a point I wasn't even going to do it at all altogether. And then finally, I don't know. I was so agitated about it and felt so strongly about it at one point that I just remember the day of the moment. Like I just put the numbers on a spreadsheet, and I knew we would be fine for the 3 years that I felt like we would need it. And we talked again, and I presented it to her. And the funny thing is, I started the business right as we were having our second kid and after we bought a house. So
great timing.
Yeah, perfect timing. I wouldn't recommend it to most people, but those are all things where you'd say, like, dude, there's way too much uncertainty in your life. Like, why would you do that? But we both felt that it was the right time, and we were both confident that our cash flow was going to be handled. So we didn't have to stress about the finances as much as making good decisions with the business early on. So
that's not. What does she do? Does she stay at home or she work? Or
she works part-time. We actually both have some part-time work to supplement that, along with savings and other things. So she works in the injury prevention field. So warehouses, people with a lot of heavy manual labor, ergonomics, just helping corporations and their employees lower injury rates. And so she works at home working with clients directly. So it really works for both of us. I mean, thank God we're fortunate we both work at home, and so we can kind of pass the kids around as needed, and we can sort of sort our schedules in a way that it works for us.
Isn't that amazing? The when you put it on paper, it never makes sense. It's
right.
Always, you know what I mean? You plan it out, but if you just say that to someone, you said, I'm buying a house, I'm in the middle of the pandemic, right?
Yep.
All this going on, and this is where you start, right?
Yep.
And there's so many stories. If you look back to the Great Depression, if you look back to any kind of the great recession that we had, all these things, and great businesses came out of those, right? And it's a different kind of person, it's a different kind of mentality to say, yeah, I'm going to go forward and do that. But one of the things that I always hear is your story to a T is you have a great network. Your wife's on board with you. If you guys are growing in different ways, it doesn't work.
Right.
You know that right now,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And all those things, it goes back to what you learn from those other families is what are your priorities? What do you want? And it seems like you and your wife have that figured out.
Yes.
Knowing that, if you would have started 2 years ago, were you ready? Or there's those 2 years of you kind of going back and forth?
No, I mean, at the time I would have said I was ready. But looking back now, most of the time my wife was the one that said, no, let's not. And at the time I would have said, I'm ready. Let's just move forward with this. But looking back, we can see, okay, it just wasn't the right time. Again, the housing situation was kind of in flux. We were growing the family. It was just not the right time back then. And it was at this time where we both felt pretty certain about it. We both felt good. And
I like it.
Yeah, that takes time. And I absolutely agree that if my wife wasn't on board, and if anyone's listening, if your spouse isn't on board, I would even say don't move forward. It's just the tension and the potential negative effect on your business or that relationship. Something's got to give if that's happening. And I've heard too many stories about that. And so I'm very fortunate that we're at a place where my wife's on board with that.
I agree wholeheartedly. Now, you in your thing, you're looking to go nationwide, right? Not just Central California. You
Right,
want to talk
nationwide.
to.
Yep.
Is that something new because of all the Zoom technologies, all this? Like when I talk to my financial planner, I don't even go in anymore, and he's like half hour away. We do it all over Zoom. Is that something that made that new, or have you always wanted to go big?
Well, I've always wanted to go nationwide, but going back 2 years, and you talked about great businesses coming out of Great Depression and different things like that. Like COVID forced the world into a place to where everyone was not only comfortable working virtually, but expecting it. And going back 2 years, like I was thinking about, okay, I'm going to need to get an office. I need all these extra fixed costs. I need to start locally. I didn't even know that really it would have been possible to be as successful working remotely back then. But now I feel like is the perfect time for that. And there is plenty of technology. I don't know if people know a lot about financial service businesses, but we are among the slowest adopters of technology there ever were. So COVID sort of dragged a lot of our businesses kicking and screaming into the 21st century. And a big part of that was virtual work. And there's plenty of technology that will facilitate that. It's out there. We just had to be willing to use it. And so that was a huge benefit of that.
That's awesome. I love when you adapt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It happened in our space. It happens here, and you're better for it. Like it's opening up a whole new world, and now people across the country have access to even more talent, right? The cream will always rise to the top, and now it's even more abundantly available. And that's if you're not an entrepreneur, you're like, oh man, this scares me. But if you are, you're like, let's go. I've never had so many people I can reach, and then from podcasting to putting out blogs, all this stuff. There's just so much ability to connect with people, and I think that's amazing. And that's the pandemic did a lot of bad things, but there's good things can come of this. You just have to be what are you looking at, right? What, glass half full or glass empty?
Exactly, and you got to be willing to change and to innovate and to sort of hop on board with that and see opportunity. Not just see the negatives, like see opportunity in things. And to your point, like there's so much access now to people, and it's not just talent, but it's also like I can find a service anywhere in the country that fits my needs for anything. Oh, well, almost anything. Not everything, but so people, customers, clients, patients, whatever it is, can look for the service they need that fits their specific scenario, and they're not restricted to geography anymore. Like who's in my local area. Optometry is not quite there, but
yeah. Well, let me ask you this now, because that's one of the big things about optometry is it can be viewed as a commodity. Right, just I can get my eyes examined anywhere. That's why we talk about having a niche and just doing a specialty, right? Well, I'm sure wealth management, financial advisors can be the same way, right? Oh, I can go anyone and they can manage my money. Why you? What separates you from this noisy market that's out there? How are you setting yourself apart, man? How are you going to grow?
I have an ability to get into the depth of different financial issues, specifically optometry and your businesses and if you're 1099 employees, the issues that you're facing in a way that I wasn't able to before as a general practitioner. I would have never in the past had the time or the opportunity or the ability or know-how to pull out financial statements of a practice. I wouldn't have been able to do that or to know how a practice influences a household finances. Like there are certain things I wouldn't have been able to do as a general practitioner that now I can do, and I can provide actual good advice on because I'm spending all of my time and energy and resources researching those things, talking with other optometrists, talking and connecting with other professionals that work only with optometrists.
The next question I have is, when you said one of your goals for 15 years is 250 families, right?
Yes.
Is that a lot or a little from where you used to be? I feel like that's not a lot.
I don't know yet. So here's where I'm thinking about that right now. Is I'm thinking roughly 75 families per full-time planner. I want to have a business that's not necessarily high on volume, but high on quality. And if that means limiting the amount of client or households or families per planner, I would rather do that.
Okay.
So I'm not, to be totally candid, like I'm not sure yet where that balance is between whether there's too much or if there's more capacity per planner yet. I'm not sure.
Always evolving,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that. I guess that's the other question I have in this is, you started your early in. Is there anything you thought you knew when you started that you've changed in the first year? Like,
Yeah.
That's that. I gotta pivot. I gotta change this. Anything you can think of?
One of the weirdest things about starting the business was that over the years, like you read books, you read the E-Myth and you think you're a business genius. Like you read Traction, you start to read all of these books and you watch other businesses and you take notes and you get ideas and you kind of build this, listen to podcasts, like you start to build information and knowledge in your head and you get an idea. Like I had an idea of the business I wanted to build. But when it came time to actually do it and execute on that, I felt like I just had a pile of like information in my head and I didn't know what to do with it. So it was a totally different experience to actually then, okay, I need to write out all of my processes. Like I need to actually put it on paper, and like no book really told me exactly what I need to do there. That's really from my own experience. And so there's it was a weird sort of feeling that like when it actually came time to start the business and get to work and put my business plan together and start to work with clients, like all that information was just sort of a pile of stuff in my head, and I had to sort it out really through trial and error, like what really would work and what didn't. And that's like constantly evolving. So I guess what I thought earlier on was I would have a better feel for like exactly what I wanted in every part of my business. And when it came down to it, I was less certain, and a lot of it really still came down to trial and error in a lot of ways.
Isn't that funny? You think you know until you get in there. It's the analogy I love to use is I love sports, and I talk to a lot of people, and they're like, "Oh, college football, it's a business. You don't. It's just you're a piece of meat," and you go, and then I'm like, "All right, whatever." You get in there, and then you live it, and it's like everything they told you hear, but when you experience it, it's like, I get why they say that, but it's completely different. And it's the same thing when you start your first practice, when you see your first patient, and like you're in control. You don't have a professor or an attending looking over you and gonna fix your errors.
Yeah.
You're on your own now, and you're like, well, and someone's looking at you and like, well, what's your policy on this? Like, well, that's great. My policy is developing, right?
It's always ongoing, always innovating, and I don't think we should be afraid of that. I think I sort of feel like business is just an ongoing experiment, and like you just gotta constantly tweak the things you're doing and constantly experiment and be willing to try new things and to measure it and see if it works, and if not, be willing to say, okay, like that didn't work out. I want frame pricing or the way you bring patients in, like whatever it is, like be willing to try something new and just see if it works, and if it doesn't, like that's okay, and move on to the next experiment.
Gotcha. Now, quick question, and this is something just a aside, but one of my favorite sayings when you're starting up, and I heard this, I think, from when I was watching Shark Tank. I forget who said it, but he said the business needs to eat first, right? When you're starting a business, you have a certain value as a financial planner, but you have to pump that all back into the business, let it grow, let it eat first. Is that hard for you to do as a financial advisor? Like, this is a different world, right?
There's different layers to that. I can go back and forth on this question. On the one hand, like I fully realize that my business needs every resource it needs to grow, and for example, like me, like I've stopped contributing to retirement accounts. In fact, I have some of that as like capital now for my business. So literally my business is my only investment right now, and all my time and energy and financial resources are going to the business. So and anyone who owns a business, a private business, like that's your priority. That's your first investment, is to make sure that has what it wants. So I am totally on board with that. So that's not hard for me. I just literally again, I went back to that day I was like putting the stuff on a spreadsheet, like a switch flipped in my brain to say, like, this is all capital now. Like, I'm all in. So maybe it took time for me to actually get to that point. But on that day, a switch flipped in my brain and said, like, I'm all in. This is all capital. Like, this is my only investment from now on until it's going. So from that standpoint, I'm totally on board with that. It doesn't bother me one single bit. What does bother me is the idea that, like, entrepreneurial poverty is a term I picked up from a book. But, like, the fact that I need to sacrifice every part of my life for the business, I don't agree with that at all. I don't think it's necessary. I think that's sort of like a harmful startup culture kind of thing. But I don't think that's necessary at all. I think you still need to prioritize yourself and your family and your health and realize that the business is just a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool for cash flow. And to help you, live out your creativity and your love for your profession. But it's just a tool. And ultimately, you have to decide what to do with what that tool provides you.
And I don't think I could have said that better, my man. I think that goes back to what we said. Like, again, the common thread is, like, what do you value? Make sure you make that the priority and then go from there, right? There's a lot of things that, you're not buying the new cars. You're not, going on all these vacations and stuff right now. But you have the time with the family. You're gonna eat, you're gonna do things, right? Yeah. You're gonna buy the things that you need, maybe not everything that you want, right? That's what my old football coach, he would say, is like, hey, a man does what he has to, not what he wants, type thing, right? And that's exactly where you're at. But in 10 years, it'll be quicker for you, man. You're going down the right path, right? But when you get there, it'll all mean more too.
Yes.
Right? That sacrifice, that stuff you put in. And that's the thing about, like, with me is when I first started, like, everything went in and I had over $250K of loans, right? 10 years later, I have no loans, a practice that's healthy, a house, 4 kids. It can be done. Yeah. But I gave up a lot early on. Yep. Right? You're doing the same thing, right? It's just priorities. And I think you said it best, though, when you said, like, yeah, you have to put it in, but you don't have to have that startup culture of, you're never going to live. You're not going to eat. You're going to eat, like, hot dogs and oranges.
Right. Whatever it is, you don't have to live on noodles. Like you can live a life. And I think that's where that personal cash flow planning really makes sense because, or is really important because you still want to be able to maintain a life that's reasonable and comfortable for where you're at, especially if you have a spouse and kids, like you do still need to provide a certain standard of living. So I think it's so important to prioritize yourself and your family and the things that you feel are more important because the business, like you're not there to serve your business. The business is there to serve you. That's something I cling on to and I think about all the time. And to your point about like time with family, this is also why it's important to have your spouse on board because it doesn't always come when your family wants it. Like, there's times where I need to take meetings late. I need to take meetings early. Our schedules are all over the place sometimes. And, something I'm constantly trying to work on with my wife is like, okay, how do we build into our life time together? Like we have to build it in. And that has to be a priority because if I let it, the business will take everything from me. It will suck me in every minute of the day if I allow it. So that's something I haven't even figured out, but is something I'm just trying to get better at. But if your spouse isn't on board and doesn't recognize that could happen and that there are sacrifices to be made, as a part of this, things can really get tough for you. So, I love that point. It's
just like when we talk about this, like business is independent of life. You have to work on your relationships just as hard as you work on your business. More. And every day, if you're not putting the effort in and evolving and finding the new way to do it better, that's what marriage is too. Yeah. And parenting and business, it all has a common theme, but you have to put the energy and effort in. And I think I love hearing other startups. You're not an optometrist, man, but you're speaking my language. We're having the same conversations that I've had. Yeah. Now, that being said, going to the next, kind of thing I want to talk about is I love human behavior. right? One of my favorite things that I do is interacting with people. I love to talk and get their wisdom and insight. And I think that's kind of core and key to what you do too, right? Is like you're in a relationship business. Am I right?
Oh yeah.
How do you build relationships? What is your go-to, like when you're meeting with someone, what are you trying to do to make that last, to make yourself just have that connection? How do you do it?
I don't think there's any cheat code to this. Like there's no magic conversation formula. I don't think that'll get you there. I think you just got to sort of be genuine. I mean, for me, it's like the way my meetings go initially when I'm having conversations with new people in general. I try as hard as I can to be genuinely interested in what's going on in their life and to ask as many questions about them as possible and to get to know them. And I think it's obvious when that's not genuine and authentic to the other person, on the other side of the table. But I think that just sort of genuine curiosity about them, that genuine desire to get to know them and to want to know what's going on in their life, I think that's probably the biggest part of it.
Outside of work, would you call yourself a social person? Are you very outgoing and are you introverted? What's your natural?
I can be. Depends on the day. It just depends, really. I mean, my favorite time of the week is when I can sit at home with my wife and especially my wife, just us two alone, and just talk and watch something together. So, on the one hand, I love just spending time alone at home, and on the other hand, I absolutely have to get out of the house and go talk with friends in my community. So, it's a little bit of both. I think just depends on the weekend.
It's a balance. I always, the way I described it is that I'm Dr. Lillie when I'm out, right? And Dr. Lillie always has to be on. I have to have the conversations. I have the interest, like I generally am, but it is exhausting to always be on, right? And when in something that optometrists, I feel we carry, and you're probably the same way, is that don't you always feel like you're being like, well, how are they carrying themselves? How are they acting? How do they interact? So it's kind of, you're in a fishbowl, and it may be self-created, and I feel it's a little more self-created when you're starting up. But as you get out and you get comfortable, it's like, I feel comfortable. My wife knows me. I can be myself and do that. Like, I have that balance myself. Does that resonate with you at all, or is that, am I the weird one?
I think it's, especially when you're putting yourself out there in public for not only like for both people that know you unrelated to your business and also just the public that might be somehow related to your business. Like, I kind of have to separate in my brain, like, these are my activities to connect with people for my business. And then these are people in my life that are not at all related to work. And I just sort of have to connect them, because if I start to think about it, like, oh, like these other people are seeing what I'm doing and they're thinking about the way I'm acting. Like, if I really start to think about it a whole lot, like, that's where some, I don't know, nerves kick in, or I get embarrassed about it. I really don't know what it is, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know what that feeling is, but I just get sort of unnerved when I like, people I know are watching these videos, or people I know are listening to podcasts, and I don't know what that is, but I have to try to like separate that in my brain. Like, these are one part of my life, and then here's another part of my life, and that's just the way it is.
Imposter syndrome is real, man.
Yes.
Imposter syndrome is real.
Yes.
So, closing up here a little bit, one of the things I like to ask is, what is success to you? Like, has that changed over the past years? Like, is success different now?
Success to me has been pretty consistent in that I want to know that I'm providing for my family. I'm spending as much time with my wife and kids as I need, and I'm spending as much time in my church community as it needs. That's like, if I'm able to do that and those are the priorities, then I know I'm on the right track. That's sort of my North Star. So that's number one, is success is I'm making sure that I have enough time to those things in my personal life that matter most. And then the other thing is that, like, I want to know that I'm helping my profession in a way that's positive and moving it forward. And instead of, I think there's a lot of parallels between financial planning and optometry, but again, the financial planning profession there's years and years and years of doing things the old way, and there's so many things that can be improved in my line of work, and so I want to be a part of like bringing that forward and and improving it. So that's the other aspect of what I want to do. And I want to know I've made a positive impact on the people I serve beyond the people I serve directly in my business. Because I can only work with so many people in the history of my whole business that, I want to know that I'm creating enough content, education, programs, whatever it is throughout my career that it's impacting, has a larger scale than just the people I worked with directly. But so those are three things that I feel are success to me. But above all, it's family in my community, my church community, and that's sort of my North Star.
I love it, man. I think optometry is a better profession with you coming into it, man.
I appreciate that.
I feel like good things. I love this conversation. Where can we find you? How do if people hear this? They're like, this is new. I like it. How do we get in touch with you? Where we can find you, man?
Yeah, first place is a podcast that I host, the Optometry Money Podcast. Dr. Nick Lillie is one of the hosts. You'll see him coming on pretty soon. But that's the first place you can follow along. Anywhere you get your podcasts, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And then you can go to my website if you want to learn more about me or my business, optometrywealth.com. And you can just check out the services that I provide, more about my background. You can figure out ways to get in touch with me and schedule a conversation if you want to go there. But those are the easiest ways to get in touch with me.
If nothing else, I hope any optometrist listening is that there's a common theme to any business owner. I don't care if we're financial planners, we're optometrists, if we're running a plumbing company, every one of those businesses and services we can learn from. I think we do a disservice to not looking at these other businesses. So that's what I love to take away from these conversations. And it wouldn't be a Ultimate OD podcast if we didn't have some actionable items for you to do tomorrow to make your office better. So Evon, anything, 1, 2, 3 things, what can the optometrists listening today do tomorrow, whether it's for their personal finances, for their businesses? What advice do you got for them? We'll end on that note.
Yeah, as I say these, I want to say these are not things that I've mastered. Like these are things I'm, along with all of you, trying to get better at and improve in my own business. So it's not necessarily advice. I guess it's just some things that I think we should all strive to get a little bit better at together. Number one, not surprising, keep clean financials and accounting. Not surprising coming from a financial guy, but keep clean, accurate books in your business. I mean, those financial statements and that data is a key part of making decisions in your business. And if the data is not good, the decisions aren't going to be as impactful. So keep clean books, work with an accountant if you need. If you need an accountant that knows optometry, I can recommend someone to anyone who needs one. So keep clean books, have a regular cadence to check that out, have a way to manage cash flow, knowing what comes in, where it goes, and where it needs to go next. So that's the financial stuff. The other stuff I think is important that I'm trying to actively work on is keep in mind that you wear two hats now. You're a practitioner, employee of your own business, and you're the business owner. And you need to make sure you're giving enough time and energy into both of those. So, get really clear on how much time you're spending working in your practice as an employee, on your practice as a manager or a leader, and then outside of your practice. And I challenge you to start with how much time you want to spend outside of your practice and what your ideal life is, and work backwards from there. So that's one thing I'm trying to work on. And then lastly, prioritize your health and your family. One of the best pieces of advice I got when starting out was that build something for yourself every single day for your own health and to deal with stress. Because there will always be stresses, and I can say from experience that it will compound just like your investing and your activities in your practice. Stress will compound and it will affect you in your body and your relationships and your practice. So build in some way into your day and your week to relax, whether it's breathing, nutrition, exercise, prayer, whatever that is for you. Try to build that into your every single day to help you out, and ultimately that'll help your family, your relationships, and your business.
I love it, my friend. Health is wealth. Those are great tips. Great conversation, my friend. I hope we check in. I would love to have you come back in the future and see where you are in a few months, maybe a year down the road, and go from there, man.
I'd love it. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Want more resources to help master your money? Check out the Education Hub on Evon's website at optometrywealth.com. Evon Mendrin is a certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors, a California registered investment advisor. All opinions of Evon and his guests are their own. This show is for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for specific investment, legal, tax, or other decisions. Clients of OWA may own securities mentioned on this show.